Hey, welcome back everyone. Today's video is going to be a combat guide for the Longsword, specifically on Fighter playing solo in Goblin Caves. I've got some clips lined up that I want to go through, talk about why I took certain actions in them, and use them to highlight things that you guys should be doing as well when you're playing Longsword Fighter especially. You know, Fighter has many tools at their disposal, crossbow, longbow, and stuff with weapon mastery, frank axes, throwing knives. There's a lot of things that you should be doing with your spacing and manipulating fights. As we get further into EA and less new players come in, you'll start getting a lot more fights with people that are gamers that can manipulate themselves too around your weapon that they know has the one-shot riposte, right? That gimmicky one-shot riposte that everyone's like, oh, that's all Longsword has. But we can play to win rather than play to parry by using the other tools around us and manipulating our spacing. We'll start off looking at another Longsword fight because you know the most important thing in these fights is knowing the matchup, knowing what people are going to do and anticipating it ahead of time, right? Baiting them into doing something because you know that that's what they think is optimal. Blocking the crouch attack and turning it into a win easy, right? That happens all the time with a lot of weapons, all right? You need to bait people into doing things you want. Like this falchion player can kill us in 2 headshots probably. Maybe 3. He aims low the whole time and we see it. He's toe ticking, so we start spacing and jumping, right? Because he's going for our toes, and if you're crouch jumping, he's gonna miss your toes. So make use of your space, make use of your crouch jump when people toe tickle, and just DPS trade. Another important thing to keep in mind when you're playing Longsword, especially because the weapon is wide, has crazy horizontal swings, you need to relocate, right? Do not take fights in tight corridors where you lose. Get back into safe spots where it's open that you can space and trade your riposte damage, because that is still where the strength of the weapon is. So make use of sprint, find the right spot to take the fight, bait people back into it. Easy. Like I said about more and more better players coming around, people are getting good at blocking. It's just natural progression, right? It's just natural progression. So, as they get better at blocking, you got to start utilizing your jump attacks while you're trading ripostes, right? You'll come across it more and more often. A good player is going to be able to actually block. Shielding does work, despite what Reddit and Discord says. A good player can land plenty of blocks that they need to land, all right? So, utilize jump attacks around these shields, all right? Time it, jump over the top. Because of the nice horizontal attack pattern, you can win easily. Don't forget, when you take the advantage, if you hit a riposte, you have an HP advantage. You can start DPS trading with the left click. It works just as often, just as easily. So when you have the advantage in HP after a riposte, make sure you use your left click DPS to finish up trades and win fights. One thing I tested out was perfect block, and it's not very usable right now. It makes the riposte timing way too tight. You can see how we blocked this guy. It doesn't matter about the desync or where we parried him. The impact resistance increase and the difference between the impact power of the falchion makes the timing as tight as if you're parrying another riposte on every weapon. So it's become pretty unusable for me, at least in my opinion for now. I'll have to change that before I think it has value, because making the timing that tight, it's just not worth it, even if it interrupts weapons. Something I've started doing when I have good position with crossbows is using sprint to gap close before shooting them. Gap closing on a ranger or someone squishy and guaranteeing your shot is super beneficial. One thing you need to make sure you're not doing is chasing with the wrong weapon in the wrong situation. Now I got lucky that I dodged and more that he missed that last shot, but I should have been chasing him that whole time with the throwing axis that I have in my utility. We re-engage later on, and how do we take the fight? We don't chase with the longsword. We use that throwing axis, our other source of damage, all right? Make sure you're using every source of damage for the right situation. Throwing axes for chasing people down, crossbows for trading damage across rooms, and holding positions and keeping people locked down. Now, this next clip is a bit of an extended fight. I wanted to show it to you guys because I have quite a few things in this clip that I think are valuable. So we started off by pushing the guy who's spacing us. He's a Slayer fighter. He has the move speed advantage. He's throwing his throwing axes and missing. We get into melee. And he's trying to manipulate his spacing as well, trying to bob and weave to poke and retreat. He makes a misplay here, trying to get a crossbow reload and takes damage in the zone. So he gives up the position that he had and gives us an advantageous position, holding the door as the zone's pushing him. Now, even with us taking a bad play here, taking 2 crossbow bolts where we try and close the door, we're still in a good spot to hold him in the zone and space him out. All right. What's important, though, is that we don't just play for the melee fight here. We play to win, right? So rather than taking the longsword out, we're going to switch the crossbow and apply damage and pressure while he's gap closing through the zone on us, because we have this tiny little area to fight. Even as a Slayer fighter using sprint, we have time for 2 reloads. We space, and then we go in and trade because we have the advantage because we just hit 2 crossbow shots, right? So don't just play around trying to get a melee fight and a melee victory if you're playing to win. Get that crossbow out, apply pressure, force them to come to you if you're in a good spot. Lay out the damage, and then lay out left click DPS rather than trying to bait riposte, alright? And really, the best thing you can learn to do is make sure you're using your throwing axes. Barbarians aren't the only people that should be buying 400 of these every match. They are so beneficial to us. So this next clip I just included because I wanted to highlight how I'm using character movement to try and manipulate my way across the open areas to gap close on certain types of characters. Obviously, it's easiest against crossbows, right? Because of their slow reload time, their low DPS. There's not 6 arrows coming at you in 4 seconds and stuff. And I know probably a lot of you already know to do this. You've had people do it against you, you've done it against others, but I just want to make sure that I point it out because it's super important, right? Now, once you trade damage and you find an advantage, you need to push it, right? We hit him in the head, he pops second wind, he's got a few ticks that have come back so far, but we still have a massive HP advantage. So we go in and we DPS trade. We have Adrenaline Rush on this time. Don't use it. It's not optimal. It's not great. Use it for fun, I guess, but it's probably going to lose you fights when you don't have second wind. In this case, I think we win this fight even without it, so it doesn't really matter, right? But we got a nice low come up and made some money off the boy. So this clip here shows the value, I think, in using the left click. Even with this guy trying to drag and go for our toes and hit us with the Viking sword, perfect block denies us our riposte, even though we were anticipating it. We end up having the left click and trade damage, right? And then as he's running away and fleeing, trying to reset, we end up taking him down with a Frank axe. But even though we got denied our riposte, despite hitting the parry because of perfect block, we still take a fight against a barb that had a pretty decent upper mid kit. You know, he's not Biss by any means, but he definitely had an advantage in the kit on us, right? And on top of that, we missed our riposte because perfect block was, well, denying us because it sucks. So make sure you're using the left click, all right? Don't just be a little parry gremlin. Use that left click and win the fights when you need to. If you're struggling with the crossbow, pull out the longbow. Just run weapon mastery. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Run a recurve bow, because sometimes it's going to clutch up as people run. If you can hit your shots, it's going to do things like this, all right? And don't forget, Longsword is very desync and server reliant. Sometimes it's just not going to line up. So when you get the Longsword out and stuff like this happens, shake it off, laugh it off, run it back in the next one, and just play for fun. That's all I got for you guys. I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Be safe.